There is a legend that says if you want to destroy a man, you don't declare war on him. You don't burn his house down. You simply give him everything he ever wanted, without him having to work for it. In the 20th century, a handful of nations won the geological lottery. They didn't have to build factories. They didn't have to innovate new technologies or educate their workforce. They simply stuck a pipe in the ground and liquid gold sprayed out. For a brief shining moment, they were the richest people on Earth. They promised their citizens a utopia where labor was optional, where the state provided everything, and where poverty was a thing of the past. But look at them today. Their economies are smoking ruins. Their currencies are worthless paper, blowing through the streets like trash. And their people are starving, quite literally, on top of the largest treasure chests in history. This is not just bad luck, and it is not a coincidence. This is a mechanism-specific, ruthless economic disease that eats nations from the inside out. It is a pattern that destroyed the phosphate paradise of Nauru. It is the same pattern that shattered the oil empire of Venezuela. And if you look closely at how the Western world is printing money today, you will realize this curse is coming for us next. There is a pattern in history that destroys empires by making them rich too quickly. And right now, we are repeating it. Economists have a name for this. They call it the resource curse, or sometimes the paradox of plenty. Logically, finding oil, gold, or natural gas should be the ultimate blessing. It is free capital. It is a shortcut to development that should allow a nation to build hospitals, schools, and infrastructure overnight. But history shows us the exact opposite result. Countries with the most natural resources often end up with less economic growth, less democracy, and worse development outcomes than countries with nothing but rocks and sand. Japan has virtually no natural resources, yet it is an economic titan. The Congo is arguably the most resource-rich land on the planet, yet it remains in perpetual poverty. Why? Because of a phenomenon known as the Dutch disease. The term comes from the 1960s. When the Netherlands discovered massive natural gas reserves in the North Sea, as money flooded in, the Dutch guilder became incredibly strong. But instead of a boom, something strange happened. Their manufacturing sector collapsed. Exports died. Unemployment rose. The easy money from gas had effectively cannibalized the rest of the economy, making every other industry uncompetitive. The Dutch were lucky. They realized the trap and fixed it before it was too late. Other nations were not so fortunate. To understand how this mechanism works and why it is threatening the global economy today, we have to look at the story of the island that ate itself. Imagine a tiny island in the Pacific, just 21 square kilometers in size. This is Nauru. If you visited Nauru in the 1970s, you wouldn't find a primitive outpost. You would find what was, statistically, the richest place on Earth per capita. It's wealthier than the United States, wealthier than Saudi Arabia. Their secret wasn't oil. It was bird droppings, phosphate. For thousands of years, migrating birds had deposited high-grade fertilizer on the island. When the modern world realized its value for industrial farming, Nauru started digging. Suddenly, the islanders had more money than they could possibly spend. They stopped fishing, they stopped farming. They abandoned their traditional way of life entirely. Why work when the ground beneath your feet is made of cash? They imported processed food from Australia and New Zealand. They built a golf course. They bought sports cars, Lamborghinis, and Ferraris to drive on an island that had only one paved road, a road you could circle in 20 minutes. The government abolished taxes. They paid for everything. Housing was free. Hospitals were free. Flights to other countries were free. But they forgot one thing: the island is finite. In the 1990s, the phosphate began to run out. The party stopped. But the Nauruans had forgotten how to survive. They had no other industries. They had no agriculture. And worst of all, their land was physically destroyed by the mining. 90% of the island is now uninhabitable, jagged limestone pinnacles. Today, Nauru is a bankrupt wasteland, dependent on foreign aid to survive. They traded their entire future for a few decades of luxury. If Nauru is the tragedy of a small island, Venezuela is the tragedy of a titan. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia. In the 1970s, it was known as Venezuela Cedida. It was the beacon of South America. The middle class took shopping trips to Miami on weekends. The Concorde jet flew regularly to Caracas. But the oil blinded them. The government believed the price of oil would only go up forever. They borrowed billions of dollars against future oil profits. They nationalized industries. And crucially, they used oil revenue to import food instead of growing it. Why farm when you can buy? Why build factories when you can just drill? Then the inevitable happened. The oil price crashed. The trap snapped shut. With no local agriculture and no manufacturing base, Venezuela had nothing to sell but cheap oil. When the money stopped, the food stopped. The currency, the believer, entered a death spiral of hyperinflation, reaching percentages that defy mathematics. The richest country in South America became a place where university professors were forced to scavenge garbage trucks for food. When we analyze Nauru, Venezuela, and countless others, we see the exact same pattern. It is not random chaos. It is a clear 5-stage cycle of decay. Once you see these stages, you cannot unsee them. Stage 1 is the windfall. The resource is found. Money floods in. The currency spikes in value. The nation feels chosen by God, and a sense of invincibility takes over the culture. Stage 2 is the displacement. This is the Dutch disease in action. Because the currency is so strong, it becomes cheaper to import foreign goods than to make them at home. Factories close. Farms are abandoned. The nation becomes a one-trick pony, putting all its eggs in one basket. Stage 3 is the atrophy of skills. This is the most dangerous stage. A generation grows up believing wealth comes from ownership, not creation. Innovation dies. The best minds don't become engineers or doctors or entrepreneurs. They go into politics or bureaucracy to get close to the resource rent. The population literally forgets how to work. Stage 4 is addiction and debt. Governments start spending based on the highest price of the commodity. When prices fluctuate, they don't cut spending, they borrow. They assume the good times are permanent, piling up debt to maintain the illusion of prosperity. Stage 5 is the correction. The resource runs out or the price collapses. The illusion shatters. But by now, the country has no immune system left. Collapse is total. Now, you might be thinking, I don't live in Venezuela. My country doesn't rely on oil or bird droppings. We are safe. Are you? The resource curse isn't just about natural resources. It is about easy money. 'Tis about the separation of wealth from work. Look at the Western economies, particularly the United States, over the last 40 years. We discovered a new kind of resource, one more powerful than oil. We possess the world reserve currency. We have the ability to print the global standard for money. Just like Nauru exported phosphate, the U.S. exports dollars. We print money to buy cheap goods from China, just like Venezuela used oil money to buy food. We have seen our manufacturing base hollow out. That's stage 2. We see our brightest minds going into high-frequency trading and financial engineering instead of physical engineering. That's stage 3. We have accumulated $34 trillion in debt. Assuming the demand for dollars will last forever, that's stage 4. We are suffering from a financial debt disease. When you can print wealth, you forget how to build it. We have financialized our economy to the point where the stock market has detached from reality, sustained only by the injection of liquidity. Saudi Arabia sees this coming. That is why they are desperately trying to build NEOM, to diversify into tourism and tech, before the oil era ends. They are terrified of the curse. But in the West, we are doubling down on the addiction. We are acting as if the printer can run forever. But what happens when the easy money spigot turns off? For Nauru, it meant returning to a primitive existence, but on a destroyed island. For Venezuela, it meant the breakdown of civil order and mass migration. For the global economy, if the paper wealth bubble bursts, the consequences will be far more severe. We have built entire societies on the promise of endless growth funded by debt and cheap resources. If the dollar loses its status, or if the debt cycle breaks, the import of cheap goods stops. The cost of living will not just rise, it will explode. History tells us that when a society forgets that wealth comes from production, not extraction, it is already dead. It just hasn't fallen over yet. The oil curse teaches us a brutal lesson. Mother Nature doesn't give credit, and the market always, eventually, finds the true price. The philosopher Ibn Khaldun wrote about this centuries ago. He said that hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. And weak men create hard times. The black gold simply speeds up the cycle. It allows us to skip the hard work and go straight to the weakness. The question is no longer if the correction is coming. The question is, do we still remember how to build things when the easy money stops? When empires fall, it is never slow. It is sudden, brutal, and final. If you want to understand the economic storms that are forming on the horizon and how to protect yourself when the pattern repeats, make sure you are subscribed to Economy Rewind. We analyze the patterns history tries to hide. I'll see you in the next one.